Okay. So now we have the teachings of Jesus, right? We're attempting to learn more about who Christ is. And with the teachings of Jesus, Jesus usually gave some lengthy discourses to communicate his message in multitudes. When you think about that, we can think about just about what we do at our jobs, right? We may have one manager, but that one manager may say things in different ways. We may have two parents, and two parents may have the same message, but they're going to have a different type of effect. So in general, the amazing thing about Jesus was we know that he at least spoke three languages, which is Greek, Hebrew, and Armenian. But at the same time, he was able to create a contextual environment so that others would be able to understand who he is through different platforms. So what can we say about this? We can say as Christians in general, we have a social obligation to make people, to enable people to possibly understand who Christ is to a greater extent based on how we view and relay information. Okay, so one of the ways that we're able to view information or relay information is through parables. And I stated that parables are a simple story used to illustrate a moral or spiritual lesson by comparing it to facts of daily life. And it's often been noted as his best teaching method, right? And it gives us a clear example of a parable, which is the story of the two debtors in Luke chapter 7, verse 40 to 50. We have an epigram. An epigram is expressing a saying or remark in a clever or amusing way. So we see a different dynamic of exactly who Jesus is. And we have so many individuals, maybe when they're preaching, when they're teaching, they have just maybe one aspect of who Jesus is, maybe as maybe an authoritative figure, maybe as a person who loves everyone, but he used his clever and amusing ways. He used his wit. In this day and age, you can say that he used his swag in order to allow people to understand in a greater context. And I think a great example is Matthew chapter 9, verses 12 to 13, and it says, "But when he heard it, he said, 'Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick,' going on what this means. 'I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners.'" So Melissa, what do you have any examples of maybe God dealing with you a different type of way, or maybe through preaching? What type of ways do you usually like to be preached to or taught?
That's a good question.
Okay, just give me a perspective of how currently, how does the person teach in your church or preach in your church?
They teach through the Word of God. They break down what they're talking about.
Okay, they break down what they're talking about, and do they usually give examples, or what do they usually do?
They give examples. They demonstrate what they're teaching about, so we can visually see the Bible, like instead of just reading it. So they'll do like a display, like a little skit, so we can understand it better.
Okay. So we can see that through different ways. Maybe I would go to your church. Maybe I wouldn't completely understand exactly what's going on, and that's perfectly fine. But for me, maybe I need to understand it in just a different context. Okay, and another example of how Jesus relays his information is through arguments. And not the type of arguments where we suppose that he gives us an argument. It's just kind of stating a reasoning for something. Not to say that we would argue with our parents, but maybe we would try to give them a reason why we should be able to go out, right? So not exactly going back and forth, but giving like a good argument, a good logical reasoning. And we have an example of this in Matthew chapter 22, verse 41 through 46, and it states, "Now while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, 'What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he?' They said to him, 'The son of David.' He said to them, 'How is it then that David, in the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. As then David calls him Lord, how is he his son? And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. So now the people were afraid, because they were saying, man, this guy really knows his word, and he's coming out with all these different types of analogies that I don't even know what to say. And I think when you speak about evangelism in general, maybe sometimes we should try to have that effect. Or maybe somebody is questioning the faith of Christianity, but because we know our history, because we know our words so much, we're able to relay information in such a great way that there's not a response, right? And another point to consider, he often answered with a questioning type of mechanism. It says in Matthew chapter 16, verse 26, for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? So kind of questioning you, but questioning in a way that makes you understand that whatever you're stating is just nonsense. It really has no basis to it. So he would kind of make all these comparisons to make you understand that, wow, what I just said didn't even make any sense. Okay? We have another part of it, which is hyperbole. Hyperbole is an intentional exaggeration to communicate this point. And I think a lot of people use this out of context. Matthew chapter 5, verse 29 to 30, I think it's used out of context a lot of times. And it states, if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. So Melissa, what do you think about the context of this message? What do you think it really means?
If your right eye causes you to sin. So basically, if you are somebody who are attracted to a woman or a man and that eye causes you to lust after that person, basically telling you to gudge it out.
Well, we can say that context, or we can say that this standpoint is an intentional exaggeration. I know there's religions that are created every day, right? You may have about 1,000 religions. I've heard statistics where 1,000 religions are created every day. And with that context, we must understand that there are parts in the scriptures that are intentional exaggerations that would lead us to allude that something is better than another thing. There's a lot of individuals, because, again, we're studying the methods of relaying information, that they don't get the information until you have an intentional exaggeration so that they can know that what they're saying doesn't hold much value, right? So in this case, the Lord is saying, if something is causing you to sin, just tear it out. But not going to that huge exaggeration, but kind of stating, if it's causing you to sin, maybe just remove yourself from that situation, right? So there's a lot of people who say, you know what, they're being tempted by all these other factors, when maybe we should just move away from the situation and then maybe we won't be tempted. If one of the things that you're tempted by is maybe pornography, then going on sexual websites doesn't make much sense to go on, right? Or maybe if you're addicted to pornography, you're not going to go to the video store and go in the pornography section, right? So it's saying if your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away, but not literally, but kind of figuratively saying, hey, you know what, instead of going to that store, if going to that store is causing you to sin, then maybe you shouldn't be going to that store, right? So there's different ways that we can try to handle our sin a different type of way, where maybe we can sin less. We're never not going to be without sin, but at the same time, it shouldn't be deliberate sin, because Hebrews chapter 10, verse 26 states that if you have deliberate sin, then maybe the blood isn't covered for that deliberate sin. Okay? So we have object lessons. Object lessons, I think, are very powerful. I like to use that in a lot of my teaching methodologies, is that you just give a real-life example that teaches a lesson or explains something. So in connection with this, we have John chapter 13, verse 3 to 11, or verses 3 to 11, that speaks about the humility through the washing of the feet, when he washed his disciples' feet. And the example that he was giving was mainly a type of service attitude. And I think a lot of individuals take that out of context. I know there's a lot of churches. I know some people won't agree with me, but there's a lot of churches out there that wash their feet at their home church for part of their communion efforts because Jesus washed feet. Now, what I can say in response to that is Jesus did a lot of things. He also shaved his beard. Does that mean that I have to shave my beard? It doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean that if I have a beard that I am like Christ. No, it doesn't mean that. So I think what we need to take out of these types of situations is that there's figurative situations that are explaining certain points of how to love or how to illustrate something. For instance, I was speaking to an individual who is of Muslim faith, and he's seen my brother, and he said to my brother, he stated about my brother that my brother is a really good guy. I'm like, well, you've never met him or spoken to him. How can you see he's a really good guy? He said, well, because he has a beard. And then I said, well, okay, he just has a beard. And he said, no, if you have a beard like Muhammad, then you are a really good person. Right? So, again, for certain individuals, they believe that things are just literal. And not everything in this world is so literal. Okay? So there's different objective lessons that we could certainly get in different activities of our life. And we have Matthew chapter 18, verses 1 through 5. And it says, call the little child to discuss childlike faith. That's another example. And we have in Mark chapter 12, verses 41 to 44, the context of unselfish giving with a woman who gave her 2 coins. Right? That's all she had, and she gave it. So he used that as a teaching moment as far as us and our sacrifice. And we also have in our lives, I'm sure everyone can think about their lives where there's just something that continually happens over and over again. Right? We have the method of frequent repetition. So, Melissa, do you think that in your life there has been a lot of repetition in your life where maybe God is trying to teach you a lesson?
Yes.
Okay, so give us an example of that.
One example I could say is putting trust in man instead of putting trust in him first. I always used to trust people to come through for me, and then they never come through. And then finally I asked God, why do I keep trusting people, putting my trust in people, and they all, I'm always getting hurt by them. So he literally says, because men are sinners, we will fall short. Men will fall short, but I will not fail you at all. So that's one thing I can say.
Oh, that's a very good point. I think that in general, a lot of us have been let down by other people. So I see from your example that maybe it happened 3 times, maybe it happened more than 3 times, but the general idea from what you just stated is that God allowed situations to happen where you're constantly being let down. You think you have a friend, and maybe that friend isn't on your side anymore, or maybe what you had faith in before prior maybe doesn't work out again. Right? So maybe these failed attempts of constantly trying to do things ourselves is a good lesson for us that we should always rely on Him. Right? So that's a great rate of repetition, and the best type of repetition sometimes is experience. In this case, Jesus gave, instead of experience, He gave 3 accounts in the same book, and that's why I took these accounts from the same book, because they're all a threefold prediction of His death. In Mark chapter 18, in Mark chapter 8, verse 31, it reads, "For He began to teach them that Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again." The second point the second time that he mentioned his resurrection is in Mark chapter 9, verse 31. For he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And when he is killed, after 3 days he will rise. Another time, in Mark chapter 10, verses 33 to 34, it reads, saying, See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over the chief priests and the scribes, and they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise. So the conclusion for each one of these verses is after the 3 days he will rise. And when we think about that, we can think about life in general, where God is constantly giving us the final conclusion constantly. But guess what? He's giving us the final conclusion in different ways. In Mark chapter 8, verse 31, it's a very short version. And Mark chapter 9, verse 31, it kind of extends itself. But in Mark chapter 10, the final conclusion, he kind of gives a little bit more meaning. And through the little bit more meaning, what I can see here is in Mark chapter 10, they're referencing mocking him. Right? They weren't mentioning mocking him before. And now it's referencing spitting on him and flogging him and killing him. Right? So throughout our frequent repetition, God is going to give us one way, He's going to give us a second way, and maybe that third way may be able to get our attention. But that third way is going to increase in length. Maybe the way that He was attempting to get your attention, maybe you didn't learn your lesson. We can think about the same standpoint with a parent and a child. With a parent and a child, maybe you're going to beat them once on the butt. Well, actually, let me change that terminology, not beat, but spank them once on the butt, or maybe discipline them once on the butt. Maybe they don't get the point. Then maybe they get it 2 times. Then maybe they don't get the point. Then maybe because they got it 3 times, maybe they finally get the point. Right? So this frequent repetition made by Jesus, made by His sayings to His disciples, sometimes they need a frequent repetition to constantly get the point. And I think another realization that we must consider is that practicum. And practicum is mainly just like a basis of education. And as I stated here, it's a course of study through application. And basically, the course of study through application, He gave the disciples a good example of application when He called the 12 together and gave them power and authority over demons and to cure diseases. Right? And basically what He stated is to take nothing for granted on your journey, nor the staff, nor the bread, nor money, and do not have 2 tunics. So He was giving them the tools that they needed in order to be successful. So sometimes the Lord is going to tell us exactly what to do. He's going to give us the tools to do it, right? And we have to be able to go out there and make disciples out of all nations, or we have to go out there and create a certain task or accomplish a certain task, right? So the conclusion here is that we will be allowed to have the tools. It's all about what we do with those tools. Now, when we think about the dates in Jesus' life, historians seldom refer to incidents involving the church, right? So, Melissa, why do you think historians, based on the examples of last week, why do you think historians seldom refer to incidents involving the church and whatever it is that they try to prove?
I really don't know that answer to that question.
Okay, no problem. So I'm going to give you a good answer for that. When you're trying to prove a point, say you're trying to prove a point to a manager that maybe you are innocent, do you think it is better to take your point of view, or is it better to take somebody else who wasn't associated with the event's point of view? Wait, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Somebody that wasn't associated with the event?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because it's going to be a lot more believable. And when you think about that context, you can say that in a court of law, that's why we have a representative. That's why most court cases that are self-defended do not win, right? Because you're just defending yourself. Having somebody trying to defend you is a lot more probable as far as winning. Somebody else who's able to give another point of view. Somebody else who's able to take the emotion out of the situation. So the historians will seldom refer to the incidents involving the church, because they believe the church has a direct benefit from whatever it is that they state. So the historians like to use other sources. So the dates of Jesus' life are very colluded. They are very different based on the scholarly view. One of the reasons why they're different based on the scholarly view is because we have the Romans who use the solar calendar under Julius Caesar, and then we have the Jews that use the lunar calendar. And the lunar calendar that they have was usually 10 to 11 days off of the Roman calendar. Okay, and then we have the thought process of AD, Anno Domini, right? Melissa, what do you think BC means? What does BC mean to you? When they say 200 BC, what does that term mean? BC.
Took a guess here before Christ.
There we go, before Christ. So usually I would always hear that AD means after death of Christ, when technically AD was used around Jesus' time. It's really signifying his birth, not his death.
Oh, okay.
Right? So Anno Domini is used to indicate that a time division falls within the Christian era. And I got that point of view from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. We have Denopsimus, which is a Scythian monk. Right? So when somebody is from Scandinavia, it's a member of the nomadic people originally of Iranian stock who migrated from Central Asia to southern Russia in the 8th and 7th centuries BC, right? And we need to understand exactly who Denopsius is, because he's the inventor of AD, right? He's the inventor of it. He also introduced the methods of reckoning the Christian era from the birth of Christ and translated documents in the papal archive under the leadership of Pope John I. What we need to understand about within certain Christian texts and what scholars usually use is the word reckoning. Melissa, do you understand what the word reckoning is?
No.
Okay. Well, the word reckoning is basically a calculation. It's a calculation that they come out with to figure out exactly what an era is. Okay?
Okay.
And what he also did was he translated from Greek into Latin the Easter tables drawn by Saint Theophilus, right? And he also translated the about 401 ecclesiastical canons from Greek to Latin. So I know in the beginning of this Bible study, we started talking about the canons and the ecclesiastical canons. So do you have an understanding now of what the ecclesiastical canons are?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so explain to us what the ecclesiastical canons are, well, from your point of view. Hello?
Yes.
Oh, well, I guess maybe you stuck for words over there, so I'll just give you a good point, right? So when he refers to the ecclesiastical canons, it's mainly referencing the points that the scholars usually use, or people of that time usually use, to understand exactly who God was, and to understand exactly who Jesus was. We talked about last week that there were stories going around about who Jesus was, who Mary was, and who Joseph was, as well as who some of the apostles were. So he translated a lot of this text from Greek to Latin so other people would be able to understand exactly the context that they're referring to. Okay? And also, what we need to understand is Dionysius had a desire to replace the Decretian years. And in Latin, the Decretian, when you talk about Decretia, Gaius Aurelius Valerius Decretianus Augustus, and that was his name in Latin. And who was he? He was a Roman emperor born of a poor family. And what the importance of knowing this name is that he persecuted the Christians. What he wanted to do is prevent people from believing the imminent end of the world, right? So we need to understand how important that was. And the reason why we're going over dates and the importance of AD and BC is because many people believe that the end of the world would occur in 500 years after Jesus' birth. Now, this is the reason why they wanted to know exactly when Jesus exactly when Jesus was born, because then they would be able to calculate exactly when the end of the world was coming. So there was a lot of people who were who thought that they understood exactly when the end of the world was coming. And we even have the word AM, which I don't see referenced many times, and it's Anno Mundi, and it means in the year of the world. And basically, it's the year dating from the year of creation in Jewish chronology, right? And they believe that the date of creation was October 7th, 3761 BC, so before Christ. So at that time, they're stating that the world was about 4,000 years. And how did they come out with this? The rabbis used the genealogy in Genesis to calculate the date of creation, and then added their own calculation. The time had to last since the time of Genesis. So the time where Jesus was born to the time where they're calculating based on the genealogies of Genesis, they came out with a certain number. And when you think about this, I know when reading the Bible, we have different parts where it just talks about the genealogy. It says, this person begot this person begot this person. At that point, it becomes, I guess, very repetitive, and maybe somebody may state, why did we have to know the genealogy in that extent? And with that being said, we need to understand the genealogy because at that time, people believed that they would be able to calculate exactly when the world ended. And the second part of it is that the genealogy kind of alludes to who Christ was, to exactly who would be the Messiah, who would be the Son of God. And when you look at Christ, part of his genealogy is David, right? So he has so many connections with multiple individuals that will allude to the fact that he is the Son of God. Okay, so when we talk about maybe speaking to individuals who don't know Christ, or maybe who are attempting to challenge who Christ is, we can go back to the genealogy. But how can we go back to the genealogy if we don't even know the genealogy, or we don't even know the purpose of it? So everything within that context is definitely important. Okay, so Melissa, I'm going to have some certain questions for you, and I'm going to let you answer them, and then if it contradicts what I believe is the true answer, then we'll just go over it.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, so the first question is, how many wise men were there?
I would say 2, 3.
Okay, so which one are you stating?
I'm going to say 3 wise.
Okay. Why do you say 3 wise men? Just give us a thought process with that.
Because in Christmas time, the stories of 3 wise men came and brought the 3 gifts.
Okay. I'm going to take that. And around what age was Jesus when the wise men seen Jesus?
He was a newborn baby.
Okay. And what type of dwelling was Jesus born in?
He was born in the den with the animals.
Okay.
Sheep. Yeah.
Okay. And what type of dwelling is that called? Well, what do they usually call it? I usually hear it called a manger. Is that what you normally hear it as well?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to recap on this. You're stating that there was 3 wise men, and Jesus was a newborn, and he was born in a manger with animals. And that's what you're stating, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to go through this. Okay. Now, in Matthew chapter 2, verse 7 through 12 and verse 16, okay, I'm going to read this for individuals who are on the phone call that maybe can't see the slides with me. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him." After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious. And he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years or under, 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Now, me referencing this, let's go back to the question before. The question before, the first question was, how many wise men were they? Okay, so how many wise men were they in this verse? These verses that we just said.
It didn't say. It didn't say. It said they.
Yes. It says they, and it also says the wise men. So the wise men, if we talk about the word men, it didn't say man. So man would be singular, right? And it would be one person. But it did say men. So now we can understand that it was probably 2 or more individuals. Right? So there was no 3 wise men. And the reason why I'm going over this, because I see this constantly in stories. I see this in pictures. I see children repeating the same thing. I see adults repeating the same thing. But there was no 3 wise men. Okay? So do we understand that there was no 3 wise men? We don't know the answer. Maybe it could be 3 wise men. But we don't have the factual basis.
You're right. Okay?
So, and with that being said, when we're trying to evangelize to an individual, how can we seriously evangelize to an individual when we hardly have our facts correct? And if they have their facts correct and we don't have our facts correct, then they start to lose faith. How is it that maybe you may have been a Christian for 10 years or 20 years and they ask you a simple question based on this scripture and we say a number 3 and there was no 3? We don't know the number. It's 2 or more. Okay? So now the second basis of the question. I stated, I questioned, around what age was Jesus when the wise men seen Jesus? Okay. Did it state how old Jesus was?
No.
It didn't state how old Jesus was. But what we can state is at the last verse, I believe around verse 16, it says that he must have been around 2 years old or under. Right? So most scholars and historians will say that he was around 2 years old when the wise men seen him. Because when we look at the first sentence in verse 7, it says, when Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. So that's the first sentence, right? And then the second sentence says, and when he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found them, bring me word that I too may come and worship them. So he sent these individuals out to go find where Jesus was or who he is, and find them and bring the king exactly who is this Jesus and what is about him. So based on your limited view of this, right? Mm-hmm. Melissa, do you believe that it would have been okay for the wise men to take 2 years in order to come back to the king with an answer?
No.
Right? So with that being said, if the King Herod was really waiting for an answer, maybe he would wait for a week. Maybe he would wait for 2 weeks. Maybe he would wait for 3 weeks. Maybe at that time, because of the specific travel arrangements, maybe he would wait for 3 weeks. Right? But the last sentence in verse 16 alludes to the fact that it was around 2 years, because why would he magically say 2 years or under? If Jesus was really a newborn at that time, then we can state that maybe the king would have said any baby that looks 1 year or under, or maybe 6 months or under, or maybe 8 months or under. But I don't think, logically speaking, the king wouldn't use the word 2 years old or under. I mean, that's like saying, he would say all the children 13 years or younger, right? He would say 13 years or younger to allude to maybe the child is 13 years, around that age. Maybe he doesn't know. He's using a guesstimate, maybe 10 to 13. So there's going to be a range. So his range was from beginning to birth to a child who looks like it's 2 years old or younger. Therefore, to allude to the wise men seeing him at birth, the likelihood of these wise men seeing him at birth is pretty low. And most scholars will believe that. Right? So now we have two answers. We have that we don't know how many wise men there were. A lot of depictions of who wise men are, they would usually have it in threes. And now we can understand that it's highly improbable, but that Jesus was a baby just being born when the wise men seen him. Okay? Do we have a better understanding of that now?
I do. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now I'm going to go down to the last question. Is what type of dwelling was Jesus born in? Okay? And what we most refer to Jesus being born in is all the movies, is all the pictures, is that he was born in a manger. Okay? And we usually depict the wise men going to a manger, correct? All right, so what I usually see is that in pictures or in movies, they have them following a sun, in this case a star, and then they're following them, and then it leads to a manger that really seems by itself, like it's in a deserted area. There's 3 of them, of course. And then, of course, it's a young baby, and then they're going to a manger. But I'm going to read the sentence again in the middle here. It says, and when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. Okay? It says here, and going into where? The house. Does it say manger?
No, it doesn't say manger.
So, now let's debunk this theory. Now, the 3 wise men did not go inside of a manger and see Jesus. It says here clearly they went inside of a house.
Correct.
So if we believe that Jesus was born in a manger, and this one says a house, then obviously the individuals within that manger must have moved somewhere else, right? And now at this point they were in a house. So by the time that these individuals seen Jesus, it was way after the time he was in a manger, right? So now we even have even more proof to allude to the type of time frame that was at that time. It was around 2 years. Okay. Hold on here. We also have other points of the birth of Jesus in Luke chapter 2, verse 7. And it says, and she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger. Right? So this is where we get the manger from, because there was no room for them in the inn. Right? And what I want us to understand is that there's multiple type of thought processes on what an inn is. It's in Greek terms, based upon when it was written in Greek, kataluma, which also means an inn, but it had multiple meanings. It also had a meaning as caravansary, right? And what's a caravansary? It's an inn with a central courtyard for travelers in the desert regions of Asia or North Africa. So we can see that based on our contextual framework of using this word, this etymology of this word, it was an inn in a certain type of place. Where is a place? In Asia or North Africa. And it usually had a courtyard for travelers, just a courtyard for people to speak and meet. It's used one other time in the New Testament, in Luke chapter 22, verse 11, as well as Mark chapter 14, verse 14, and it's used as a parallel statement, which means it's the same type of passage, but written in a different type of way from two different individuals. Kataluma also refers to a place where Jesus observed the Last Supper with his disciples. He said it was a furnished, large, upper-story room with a private Jerusalem house. The Kataluma of the last night of Jesus' earthly ministry was an upper room. And now when you talk about the three wise men meeting Jesus, it was probably in this type of setting. Right? Jesus may have been born in a manger, but where the wise men probably seen him was the same type of dynamic of where the Last Supper was held, which was an upper room in an inn or in a manger. Okay. We have here other points to consider when we talk about the word manger. The biblical account mentions neither a barn or a cave. Okay, it doesn't mention a barn or a cave, so a lot of people allude to a barn being somewhat of a manger. Okay, it was assumed because it's a manger that it looked like our present day of what a manger is. So let's go through another example of this, of the example that I used last week. So what's your definition of marriage?
When two people become one.
So when two people become one.
Under the eyes of God, a covenant. They form a covenant underneath the eyes of God.
Okay. So you alluded to there being two people, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the old definition is the use of a man and a woman. So what used to happen is that when we refer to marriage in general, most people would believe that marriage is a connection between the connection between a man and a woman before God. And now, using the etymology of that word in the context of today, instead of a man and a woman, now it's two individuals. Okay, so now we understand why we have so many versions of the Bible. We have so many versions of the Bible because the English language changes, right? The text of our language changes. And a good example of this is what we just alluded to with the word marriage, is that the word marriage is going to change over time. Okay? So what does this mean? Ethics changes over time. What we believe is ethical at one point of our lives may not be ethical today. So when we speak about the word manger, is not the same manger that we see in these videos and that we see in these photos. So mangers at that time, they were used for animal feeding, and basically they would have some type of barn activity there. But in the ancient world at that time, mangers were found in a house, right? Why? Because animals were usually kept in homes at night. Right, so mangers were in a house. So when we have these depictions of Jesus outside, and he was outside in the manger, and it was an external manger, it was just something just clearly there by itself, then that may be a false account of exactly where Jesus was born. Okay, he wasn't just born outside in a manger and there was nothing around. If you look at the historical context of how mangers were built at that time, mangers were usually found in the house itself. Other points to consider with that is that a small number of flock animals were housed, not in an attached exterior sheds, but inside the house in one of the ground floor rooms. So, with this being said, the manger will be inside of the house somewhat, and we'll have the animals, and we'll have the animals around on the bottom floor. They may not be on the upper floor. Maybe the people were on the upper floor and they were doing different things on the upper floor. But on the bottom floor, you would have some of the animals. And basically on that bottom floor, animals, tools, and agricultural produce were stored. Food was usually prepared at that bottom floor. But usually, like I stated before, the family sleeping quarters were on the second floor. But another thought process to understand about these mangers is that the animals were on the bottom, and in the house in general. They were in an external environment, and they were there to be protected, of course, from any type of theft. And also, these animals produce a certain type of body heat for those cool nights, right? And then the cows or the goats were there to have easy access to milk for them daily, right? So now when you think about the context of a manger is something totally different than what we believe a manger to be in our eyes today. Okay, do you have a better understanding of that now, Melissa?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have the reasons. Oh, actually, let me go back to the other slide before you see it. So what is the reason why they use gold, frankincense, or myrrh to bring to Jesus at that time? Why did they use those objects?
I'm going to take a wild guess. I believe those are the most expensive fragrance.
Okay, they were highly expensive. You're correct, but let's have a little bit of a deeper meaning to that expense. See, the birth of Jesus. Yes, they did bring gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Again, this doesn't mean that he was a newborn at the time, although these were things that were presented to newborn kings. So that's why a lot of individuals believe that he might have just been born because is what you give to a newborn king. Okay, but in reference to that, gold at that time represented the kingship on earth. So if you had a lot of gold at that time, it was just, hey, you're king. You have a lot of rappers. You have a lot of individuals that wear gold around their necks, that have gold, maybe plates. They have gold spoons. You have the phrase, you're born with the silver spoon in your mouth, right? So kind of illustrating a certain type of kingship. Okay, then we have frankincense. Incense was a representative of a deity. So, Melissa, what's a deity? Okay, no problem. Then I'm going to explain to you what a deity is. A deity is a type of spiritual being or a type of God, right? So frankincense, in this case, the reason why they're giving him that frankincense is to illustrate how much of a God this individual was. And we have the myrrh, which represents the death of a mortal, and it's used as an embalming ointment. So at that time, they used myrrh as an embalming ointment for a death of a mortal. So what can we take from this? That gold represented that Jesus is the king on earth. Frankincense, meaning that, frankincense was sent, meaning that he is God. He is the the incarnate being on earth. And we have myrrh, which illustrated his mortal being side. So here he is, he's a king, he's God, and he's mortal here on earth. Right? So those specific gifts were of serious meaning. Okay? We do have here the death of Jesus. When was the death of Jesus? A lot of scholars will say that the exact date is not available. But what we can allude to is that in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea and Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip tetrarch of the region of Iturea and Trachonitis, and Lysanias tetrarch in Abilene. What does this mean? Basically what we can take from this is that they refer to the 15th year of the reign of a certain king. And that's mainly how we try to allude certain events. So just like how we just spoke about, the Jews would try to allude to or reckon, which is just a calculation, when the earth was created in 3761 BC, whereas we're just trying to allude to when the exact date of Jesus' birth based on certain records that we have here. In this case, it's the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar. And what we can take from that is that Jesus' ministry began shortly after that. Okay? Now, and going on, we talked about this last week. We talked about Tacitus, right? He was a Roman historian. And I'm referencing the death of Jesus for a reason. I'm referencing it because there's a lot of people who don't believe that Jesus actually died. And based on this Roman historian who didn't believe who Jesus was, right? So he didn't, well, I can't say he didn't believe who Jesus was. He didn't want to believe that Jesus was the Son of God, but he believed that Jesus was alive and that he was doing miracles, right? So we can attribute that. And one of the things that he said, as I highlighted here, is Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate, and a most mischievous superstition, thus checked for the moment, again broke out not only in Judea and the first source of the evil, but even in Rome, where all things hideous and shameful from every part of the world find their center and become popular. So they're giving us a good example, a good historian view of exactly what Rome is. Rome was the center of the world, the most popular center. So in this case, it would be like our New York City. It would be like our Los Angeles. And what he's stating here is that around that time in Rome, one of the most popular cities, and if Jesus wasn't available, you can say that in that case there would be like some sort of tabloids at that time. Since it was a very popular city, we can say that the technology based on that time period was very advanced, where maybe they would be able to process information even quicker than most areas. So if Jesus wasn't really crucified, it would be circulated all throughout fairly quickly that people were making up stories. So this is another reason why we should believe that Jesus is the Son of God. All right. And aside from this, and relating to the death of Jesus, we even have in the Quran, in the Sahih International, in the Surah 4:157, we should also understand different contexts of exactly who God is and different illustrations of exactly who Jesus was through different sources, as we stated before, to have a different context, to be able to relate to somebody who maybe doesn't understand the Bible, or maybe they don't believe in the Bible. Maybe they want you to give historical accounts, or maybe they want you to use other sources. But then we have things that contradict, such as that in the Surah 4:157 of the Quran, and it says, "And for their saying, indeed, we have killed the Messiah, Jesus, the Son of Mary, the Messenger of Allah. And they did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but another was made to resemble him to them. And indeed, those who differ over it are in doubt about it. They have no knowledge of it except the following of assumption. And they did not kill him for certain." So in the Quran, they're saying that maybe Jesus really wasn't crucified, or maybe he wasn't really. Maybe he didn't really resurrect. So we have different accounts of maybe Jesus not being crucified or not being resurrected. But what we can actually state is that he did live, right? Because even in the Quran, we're saying the word of Jesus. We're saying exactly who Jesus was, and we have different accounts of him actually creating these miracles, or these miracles being done through different apostles. So we can say that the works of Jesus were actually done. Okay? And connecting the death of Jesus, now we can say that, this is another account of what we need to understand about the crucifixion of Jesus. And my question to us is, why did Jesus first refuse and then drink the vinegar offered at the cross? It says in Mark chapter 27, verse 34, "They offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink it." All right, so Melissa, why do you think he didn't drink it?
because it had a sour, bitter taste to it. I don't know.
Okay. That's a good answer. That's a good logical answer. Let's read the second example that I'm giving here in John chapter 19, verses 29 to 30. And it reads, "A jar full of sour wine stood there. So they put a sponge full of the sour wine on a hyssop branch and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the sour wine, he said, 'It is finished.' And he bowed his head and gave up his spirit." I think what's so amazing about this is that it's something that just fulfilled the law. In Psalm chapter 69, verse 21, it says, "And they gave me poison for food, and for my thirst they gave me sour wine to drink." So the reason why Jesus allowed this to happen, and he didn't feel like he finished his role until that event happened, is because it was fulfilling the law in Psalm chapter 69, verse 21. Right? So how amazing is it? And this is why we should believe the scriptures even more, because here's a guy who's fulfilling the law. Right? He's doing exactly what the future told him to do, well, what the past told him to do. And this is exactly why, another reason why we should say that he is the king. Because in Psalm 69, verse 21, it's referencing what the king will do, what the Messiah will do. And he did all the accounts. He fulfilled all the laws of what he was supposed to fulfill as far as being the Messiah. He died on the cross, right? And in this case, he fulfilled it by even something as simple as about to taste the sour wine to drink. Okay? We have here, there's a period of preparation. And in this period of preparation, it's broken down into three facets. There's three important events that took place within the four Gospels, or we can say the Synoptics, which is Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We have the ministry of John the Baptist. We have the baptism of Jesus, and then we have the temptation of Jesus. All of this is all important because it's referencing the period of preparation. And when you think about this alludes to exactly what we'll go through in life, right? There's going to be a ministerial period of understanding exactly who Jesus is and maybe attempting to do his work. And then we should all be baptized. And then with that being said, we will all be tempted in some type of way, right? So the reason why somebody like Jesus was tempted is to make us understand that all of us will be tempted. If even Jesus was tempted, then obviously we may be tempted in some type of way, right? But with that being said, we can understand exactly how Jesus combated all his temptation. And what did he do? He often repeated the Bible. He often referenced exactly what the Bible was stating. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to know your scripture, because how can you battle situations without your weapon? Your weapon in this case is the scripture. So Jesus used the scripture of the Old Testament in order to battle the enemy. So this is the reason why we need Bible studies. We need Bible studies in order to memorize information, in order to contextualize this information, no matter what type of way that we have it, so that we can understand this context to an even greater point. Okay. Now we have Jesus' early Judean ministry. In this case, Jesus made contact with those who would later become his disciples, and he made detours to Galilee where miracles would be performed. Okay, so that's the early part of the Judean ministry, which is mainly referenced in John and only John. The rest of the Gospels usually go over the Galilean ministry, right? And the Galilean ministry, I break it down into three specific periods. The major works of Christ. The first period of the Galilean ministry is that Jesus' work up to the time of choosing the 12 disciples. Okay, the second period ends with the withdrawal of Jesus from northern Galilee, and his teachings and his performing of miracles and his development of the opposition by religious leaders in Jerusalem. And the third point is that Jesus ministered largely outside of Galilee and returned there only as he traveled toward Jerusalem for the first time. So we have here the Galilean ministry, which is the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they will reference the Galilean ministry. And then we have the Judean ministry, which is mainly referenced through John. The last point that I want us to take into account is the final journey to Jerusalem, right? So the final journey to Jerusalem is that there's a lot of loose chronological links. And with these loose chronological links, we have here the Syrian ministry. And we have here the resting place of John the Baptist, east side of the Jordan River, about 1/3 way down of the eastern shore of the Dead Sea. And with these accounts of the final journeys of Jerusalem, John, the ministry of John is only referenced throughout this period through the Syrian ministry. And we can say that throughout this period of the Syrian ministry, it's the account of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead. So in this case, it is now 10:04, and now we're about to conclude this Bible study. But first, I want to take on any questions that we have in the audience. So I'm about to unmute the conference line to see if we have any questions from anyone. So hold on here.
You are now unmuted.
Yeah, so everyone is unmuted now. Does anyone have any specific questions on anything that I spoke about this evening? Okay, I'm going once, going twice. Okay, I'm going to put it back, us back on mute. Well, viewers back.
You are now muted.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for being in this study tonight. Of course, as I always state, you can email me at any point, and we can just have a great conversation about who God is in every contextual framework. And yeah, you can just contact me anytime, or I can send you the slides if you email me. And these Bible studies will also be on my website on the Bible study tab or on YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to lead us out with a word of prayer so we can finish up. All right. Father God, I thank you for this time of allowing us to understand exactly who you are to a greater extent. I thank you for the representative on the line, Melissa, who gave her point of view, and she tried her very best to do so. I thank you for these callers on the line, and please bless them for wanting to know exactly who you are to a greater extent, to have deeper knowledge of who you are, Lord. I thank you for allowing me to have this study today. I thank you for giving me any type of wisdom throughout these lectures, Lord Jesus. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right, so everyone, have a great evening, and I'll see you again next week. Good night.